Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships here in King George V, my favourite ship, for another battle and actually my new damage record, so I thought this would be a fun one to do. As you can tell, I kind of like the King George V. I've been playing it with it a lot recently, purely because I like having the two guns at the front of the ship. I think it works pretty well. And then the one gun at the back, but it means you can be pretty much nose on to an enemy ship and fire 2/3 of your guns, which I think is pretty useful. So this is a tier 5 through 7 battle, so we are the upper range with 4 battleships, 4 cruisers, 3 destroyers and a submarine per team. And as we get things underway here, I just want to iterate that not everything here is going to be a King George V replay. It's just I've been playing a lot with it recently. I do tend to favour battleships in general, but I've also been working on my German battleships, the tier 6 currently at the moment. It's not the Iron... Oh, what's the name of it? It's the one before the Gneiser now. Possibly the Bayern, I think is the name of it. And so I want to build a brawler class with the Gneiser now when I actually get enough experience to unlock that. Because it feels like quite a fun class to do a brawler with. You know, it's a battleship which has torpedoes, which is quite rare anyway. And then that's going to allow me to hopefully mix that with a secondary build. So I'm just constantly firing and then use the torpedoes while getting close, because it will need to be a ship that gets in close to the enemy ships to really have any good effect. But that's a different kind of battleship from the build than from the one I'm doing here, because the German battleships tend to have more of the armour piercing, whereas here in the British battleships they tend to be more to do with the high explosive, and you'll see I use high explosive pretty much the entire battle here. The Nagato goes unspotted, but I do my initial salvo to try and deal with him. I think that Nagato actually fires back at me momentarily. We're going to be seeing a lot more of that Nagato throughout the entire... There we go, he's firing. We're going to be seeing a lot more of that Nagato throughout the entire battle. He's a bit of a white whale. He's going to show up every now and then. He's going to always be a problem. And we're going to be engaged in a battle for pretty much... not nearly the entire battle, but he's always going to be a thorn in my side and trying to get in the way. So we do have to try to deal with him while also being aware of those ships over there, the Omaha, the Colorado, and the Queen Elizabeth. Because I think he's behind the island at this point, I decide to turn, so I'm bow... or is it bow in? Basically, I'm fronting against those 3 ships I just mentioned earlier, and there's Nagato again. And I'm desperately waiting for him to peek around this corner, and then I hopefully get some good shots off, which I don't think I do actually. So the overall damage output I think is about 130,000 by the time I'm done, but it comes at a cost. I do get incapacitation off, but I think he's also trying to fire at me, but he's also turning in slightly, which is why the armor piercing I don't think is the right call generally at this point. But I'm also taking shots from elsewhere, and I try to work out where it's coming from. I'm not entirely sure, so I just go back to the Nagato for the time being. He's moving pretty slowly, so I fire over there, and then I start turning to hopefully try and mitigate any issues coming from the right-hand side. I think it might be that Colorado which fired on me there, and it's a frustration because the Agano there just dies pretty quickly early on, and... although I do have, I think I might have a friendly Colorado with me, possibly Gneiser now. We're kind of slightly outmatched on this flank, and we pay the price for it, but we pay the price across the entire mission. A lot of people die. But I keep on firing this Nagato, because really he's the one I want to get out earlier in this engagement. I don't manage to, but that was always the plan. I see him firing there, and I start to try turn. I think here is where I take an absolute walloping of about 20,000 damage. There we go. Perhaps I turned at the wrong time, but it wasn't great. We ate a lot of damage there. I also try not to crash into the Gneiser now. As you're about to see in chat, the Nagato calls me out for using high explosive against him for pretty much the first 5 minutes of this engagement. And I respond in kind. That's what you get for spamming King George V, i.e. me. But yeah, that was a bad hit. 23,000 damage on one salvo. I think I probably turned into his shots, which didn't help, but I was trying to get myself as thin a target as possible. I just don't think I turned quick enough to be able to deal with it. So I kind of decide that, well, that was a terrible idea to try to take on the Nagato, so I'm just going to run away. I see the Queen Elizabeth there, the previous tier of British battleship below the King George V, the tier 6 Queen Elizabeth. And I'm like, well, that's someone I can try, hopefully take on. Especially as we've got some more friends here, including the York, the U-69, the Ismail, and the L'Argentine, although those guys are a little bit further away. Yes, at this point, the capture point of Charlie feels quite untenable, so I decide to kind of try help keep Alpha and Bravo alive. Because we will have the point advantage for the majority of this game, but again, it comes at a cost of a lot of people dying. As you can see at the top there, we're already kind of 2-4 down in terms of our ships, so we are already having an issue. I rather stupidly send a depth charge plane over towards that cachalot, but without realising it's much, much further away than I thought. I keep trying to keep this Queen Elizabeth on fire just so it burns to death, hopefully. And it will eventually go down, but sadly I don't get as much damage as I would like. Really, I might want to start thinking about going to the armour-piercing suit, but really the battleships of the British are much better at the high explosive. I take another hit, I think, from the Colorado. Not that Colorado, there's another Colorado, kind of in G7, just below, down to the southwest of Bravo. And I believe the Queen Elizabeth nearly dies to the shots here that I send, but not quite enough. And someone else finishes the Queen Elizabeth off, which is fine. I don't particularly care about kills. I care about us winning. That's, it's always been a team game. If someone gets the kill, that's one person less to deal with, which is excellent. I then switch fire to this Colorado because he hasn't had many issues this entire game, and I want to start wearing down his health with fire and burning some of his damage control so that he can't use it later on. I'm also aware that Nagato is still kind of proving a problem over there. So I go broadside onto the shores of the Nagato, which is probably a terrible idea given what happened earlier. But I want to make sure I'm giving a thin target to the Colorado, which is much, much closer than the Nagato, and arguably would be an easier hit for them as opposed to the Nagato, which is quite far away. I try go after the shores and take him out because he's on low health, and my shots can still do pretty well here. And we do take him down to just under 2,000 damage. I leave the shores alone because I hope that someone else will finish him off. I can see the Nagato coming in for me again. As I said, he's a bit of the white whale. He's kind of always a thorn in my side and always kind of proving problems there. The hill, I believe, will finish off the enemy shores, and we go back to the Colorado, who I don't think is really focusing us at the moment, which is wonderful, so we kind of try fire him again, but I don't want to stay broadside onto the Colorado for too long, because I just don't think it's a very safe thing to be doing. We get a pretty bad salvo against the Colorado, and we do have the friendly Gunaiser now with us as well. And so me and the Gunaiser now kind of form a quite crucial team towards the end of this, but we'll have to see how this ends, because it's a pretty close one again, as with the previous one of these I did. But as you can see in the top, we're doing pretty poorly. We are again 2 ships down, and now 3 ships down. We lose the U-69 and the hill. So at this point, things are starting to look pretty dire, all things considered. The Gunaiser now, I believe, finishes off the Colorado. And there's also a friendly York who does a good amount of damage. We don't get to see it, but the York is doing a lot of work against the Königsberg back there. Again, I just try to keep the Colorado on fire, but we lose our Ismail, the other battleship, alongside the Gunaiser now and myself. So now we're down to 3 versus 7, which is not a good ratio at all. The Gunaiser now, I believe, finishes off the Colorado. That Colonel Bolognese, we'll be seeing a bit more of him towards the end. Him and Colonel Bolognese and the Nagato from over at Charlie really proved to be 2 of the biggest frustrations in this entire battle. Yes, the Gunaiser now finishes off the Colorado. At this point, we're still holding out from Bravo, so even though we're down quite a lot of ships, we are still doing pretty well in terms of points, although there is an enemy submarine flipping Alpha, so we're not getting any of the points from there. Although, we certainly try to hold on as long as we can. The enemy York there does well to take out the cachalot, and us 3, me, the York, and the Gunaiser now can really put up a last-ditch attempt here to kind of save ourselves and actually do some useful work here. We're all at Alpha. There's not really a chance of us pushing back towards Bravo or Charlie to hold on to it, so we have to do this via kills. Unfortunately, the York takes a major detonation for the remaining Colorado and sinks instantaneously. I'm still aware that the Nagato is firing at us. As I said, he's going to show up throughout the entire battle. But me and the Gunais now, the two remaining ships, we go after the Colorado, try to finish this guy off, and I believe this is my one kill of the battle against the Gunais now. We do have a shot scene coming from the Colorado, but we do manage to take him out. We do take a little bit of a hit here, but nothing too bad. Thankfully, most of it missed. We then try to focus on the Königsberg and the Colonel de Bolognese. I'm probably mispronouncing that many times. And unfortunately, I think if you'll see over there on the left-hand side of the screen, the Gunais now get stuck on that island, and it proves to be his downfall as eventually a enemy destroyer will come out from behind that island and cause a great deal of issues. I'm not sure if it's this island he gets stuck on or the next one, but either way, it's a frustration. That Nagato, despite having put a lot of damage into that Nagato, he's going to just repair a lot of his health, which is one of the problems with the high explosive, because high explosive is much more easy to repair, whereas armor piercing is something which doesn't leave much opportunity for repair. At this point, I probably could have switched over to the armor piercing, given that I'm taking on the Colonel Bolognese, but I thought that because the destroyer is about, my armor piercing shells would over-penetrate and actually not do much damage, because they would go just straight through the ship and explode not too close to anything useful. So I decided to switch with the high explosive, but really the armor piercing would do well against the Colonel Bolognese, and I do come to regret that decision when I have a clean shot of the Colonel Bolognese. I'll be able to do some good damage, but not enough. The Gunais now get stuck on the island up ahead, and that proves to be his downfall. We're still ahead on points, but with 7 minutes left of the game, we really have to keep trying to push with some kills, otherwise we don't have a chance at actually winning. We have managed to kind of narrow the gap, and mostly thanks to the Gunais now and the friendly York who got detonated. They put in a big shift to get us down to 2 versus 3, which is pretty good given we were at 3 versus 7 a little while ago. Unfortunately, that Gunais does get stuck there, and I'm aware that there's a destroyer somewhere nearby, and there he is, the T-22, who has full health. I try to send off a salvo, but I think he's moving a bit too fast to really get a good salvo against. The Gunais now fires against the Nagato. At this point, I really should have switched over the armor piercing to, first of all, try damage the Nagato a bit more, but also to deal with the Colonel Bolognese, who's still hiding somewhere. And as you can see, the Gunais now is about to eat, I think, both of those torpedoes, and he'll eat some more before the time is over. And it's that's how the friendly Gunais now goes down. He'll send his own torpedoes back. Sadly, I fired at the wrong person at the wrong time. If I'd saved it a little bit longer, I could have probably maybe killed that T-22, but by that point he's got his torpedoes off. Our secondaries open up, but the Gunais now will die here with 3 torpedoes, or 1 torpedo fired against him, but he'll be flooding, I believe. And the Colonel Bolognese will be showing up soon. Pretty soon I switch over to the armor piercing. The T-22 will go down anyway, so I'm going to fire on the Nagato to try and deal with him. The Gunais now takes out the T-22 with his secondaries, but will go down pretty soon himself. There I see the Colonel Bolognese. I'm like, this would have been the perfect time to have my armor piercing on. Not so much there, but we will need it soon. Sadly, that T-22 gets a few more torpedoes away before he dies, and that's the death of the Gunais now, who will die to flooding. And kind of posthumous kill for Pato LW there in the T-22. At this point, I should have switched over to the armor piercing because I really needed to kill these people. We were still ahead on points. We get our high caliber. We were still ahead on points, but not enough to really manage. There was still 5 minutes left in the engagement, and we wouldn't have survived. We would have lost on points. And given how many issues I had with that, the last one of these we did, I tried to consider that when I was planning. At this point, this is the point I wish I had armor piercing in, because at one point soon the Colonel Bolognese will come into sight and will fire at me. I believe just about now. There we go. And here I wish I had the armor piercing, because this salvo will do a lot of damage, but had I had the armor piercing in, I could have probably detonated him, or at least got some citadels, and then it would have just been a case of me versus the Nagato, that ever-present Nagato. I tried to turn myself behind the island, but I also make a mistake and then I turn the other way to try and get my guns to bear, which was a mistake. Had I killed the Colonel Bolognese, I might have been able to survive just on time, but I don't think I would have, given there was only 100 points between with only with 5 minutes left. This is the mistake I made. Instead of turning behind the island, I then turn around to get my guns to bear on the Colonel Bolognese, but that brings me into a broadside engagement with the Nagato, who will be the one to kill me eventually. So again, a very close engagement, but not one that I can win. And there's the Nagato, and here I take a ginormous salvo. 2 massive salvos to the Nagato throughout the battle pretty much end me off here. It's another 20,000 hit. At this point, I call GG because it's all over. All it takes is one more salvo from either the Nagato or even just from the Colonel Bolognese as well. Because Colonel Bolognese is a decent ship. I do my best. I do now have the armor piercing loaded, but I have a genuinely terrible salvo here and do 2 over penetrations. And I express my frustrations in chat. But thankfully, the Nagato gives me a nice try, even though without a fruitful outcome. I try turn here to get away from the Nagato, but really it's just a question of holding on till the last second, but there's no way I can survive. He wants me to die, I refuse to do so, but one more salvo from him will cause that. That's the dreadful shot I had there. He's so close to Nagato. When I was looking at the post-battle statistics, I saw that I'd done about 80,000 damage to the Nagato, but of course, because it was high explosive, he healed up most of it, and that was a frustration. And there we go. And here's the kind of post-battle score. So about 130,000 damage. Only 1 kill, but my new damage record in any ship. And I really should play something other than King George V, but I really like it as a ship. I actually really enjoyed the Queen Elizabeth, the previous tier, but I'm really enjoying the King George V now. I'm really getting used to it as a ship because I'm playing it a lot. But anyway, I digress. I've been talking about the King George V a lot today. Thank you so much for watching. More to come soon indeed. Take care. Bye-bye.